Let's talk about the Flash. Oh, not this Flash. The other Flash. That Flash. There we go. Because at the bare minimum, at least that Flash doesn't microwave babies. I think. Grant Gustin doesn't microwave babies, does he? Okay, but I'm not really here to talk about the Flash. I'm here to bully the Flash so I can make a point that I've been wanting to make for a long time. Because a lot of problems in the Flash can actually be extrapolated to different movies, like Black Adam. Oh, sorry, I got a weird cough going on. Forgive that. Also, here's hoping that Warner Brothers doesn't block this entire video because of this short trailer clip. Wish me luck. But what I'm actually here to complain about today are superpowers. You guys like superpowers, right? Everybody likes superpowers. But with great power comes great responsibility. A responsibility for the writers to reread their scripts before they get their movies made. So why don't we just jump on in and talk about Flash's little power problem. Now, if you haven't seen Madvocate's videos on the Flash, I'd highly recommend watching them because they explain a lot of things that are wrong with this show. But one of the main things he covers in the series are the inconsistencies created by Barry's main ability, super speed. Now, the reason I think this show is so interesting is because it illustrates a big issue that's in a lot of superhero properties nowadays. That being the ever so illustrious power problem that I mentioned earlier. You see, whenever your main character has a super overpowered ability, you have to tailor the story around it or else the entire thing will fall apart. Like for instance, if you had the ability to move so fast literally everybody around you looked like a statue in comparison. Now, I don't have time to go into every single ability that Barry has and why it causes so many problems in the show, but again, you can go watch those Madvocate videos if you're interested. I'll link them in the description. But the long and short of it is, Barry can move so fast and his enemies are mostly so slow that he should be able to instantly knock all of them out or just throw them in prison right away. And he just has several overpowered abilities that he can use to instantly win almost any fight if the enemy doesn't have a counter for them, which most of them don't. Now, there are a few people who can reasonably match up to the Speedster, like Reverse Flash.
It was me, Barry.
But believe it or not, villains here who could reasonably beat Barry are few and far between. And I think there's two main reasons why this happens in the show. Those being villains of the week and crossover content. I'll get to crossovers in a bit, but let's talk about the villains. Now, for the early seasons, I haven't watched the later seasons because they suck so much I couldn't finish them. The Flash had a villain of the week style storytelling where they would fight a different metahuman every episode. This is fine on its own, but super speed makes this an issue. See, the writers have to constantly introduce new and unique characters with different superpowers, but the list of powers that can actually counter super speed is not that long. I mean, think about it. If you can move so fast you can knock someone out before they can think, a lot of people won't even have the chance to use their superpowers. It doesn't matter how good your powers are if you get knocked out before you can even use them. And it becomes especially stupid when some of the villains Barry is fighting are just like normal dudes with guns.
No, because he's like shooting other innocent people, right? So you have to get them out of the way of the blast first. Meaning, you don't have time to stop the guy who's actually shooting the gun. Are you hearing me like at all right now? He still has to press the trigger, okay? It doesn't matter what he's aiming at or what the gun even does, okay? If he can't press the trigger, nothing's gonna happen. I don't know.
Now, you could go the lazy route and just give every single villain super speed, but that would get incredibly boring, and they basically did that for every single main villain, you know, Reverse Flash, Zoom, Savitar, Godspeed. Eventually, at some point, it's just gonna feel like you're fighting the same guy over and over and over again. And to avoid every single fight just being a blur fest of two dudes running around CGI town at Mach 5, you have to do dumb shit like give them lightsabers. Now, there are a few more things which can counter super speed, like they fight a guy who's made of sand at one point, but the sand guy isn't super fast, so he shouldn't be able to hit Barry either. So at most, you're just going to get a stalemate. So if the Flash basically just has an instant win button in every single situation, how does he ever lose? Well, he loses because the plot makes him an idiot. You see, the writers are in a situation here where they have to throw in a bunch of superpowered people who really aren't suited to fighting the Flash. If the Flash were operating at peak capacity and actually using his brain, he would win pretty much every single fight right away. The only way for a majority of these villains to defeat Barry, escape, or do anything at all is for the writers to come down with the hand of God to give them plot armor. Barry will just sit there and let them escape, or stop using his super speed so they have a chance to knock him out, or just get nerfed for no reason. And that would be fine for like 1 or 2 scenes, but when every single fight scene has to constantly have Barry be nerfed or get fucked over because the enemy has plot armor, it starts to feel really annoying. Barry ends up doing the dumbest things possible in every situation, because if he didn't, the story just wouldn't happen. And while it does let the plot, exist, it does come with the side effect of making Barry look like a helpless moron. I guess that would be okay for like season 1 when he just got his powers and is learning how to use them, but when you get to seasons 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, he should have some clue of how to use his powers at this point. But this is where we get to the core of the power problem, the reason that this story falls apart if you think about it. It's because Barry's power level is too high for the story that he's in. I've said before that a story is like an enormous clock. Every element of the story is like a gear that helps the clock function. And it's at its best when all of the pieces are working together in unison to create a really awesome narrative. But if one of those pieces is broken and doesn't fit the story, it can cause the whole thing to just break down. I may be wrong on this, but it's my personal opinion that the Flash as a character just doesn't work for this kind of villain of the week show. Now, I'm gonna look like an idiot for saying this since the Flash movie came out and it bombed really hard, but I feel like the Flash would be better suited for a movie. A movie with just one villain, like Reverse Flash, someone that actually makes sense for Barry to fight. A serialized show with 500 villains is going to have several villains who don't fit. Just by the nature of how overpowered super speed is, there's very little you can do to get around it. But this villain of the week style stuff isn't the only thing which causes the Flash to not make sense. Because the Flash isn't alone, oh no, it's in a cinematic universe with a bunch of different shows, too many. And because there's so many different shows with so many different protagonists, we gotta do some crossovers, baby. And of course, there's no one else better to match up Barry with than the guy with a bow and... I've actually rewatched the first season of Arrow recently, and it's surprisingly good. And of course, there are no power problems here, because Green Arrow is just a dude with a bow and arrow. And this show is actually balanced around the fact that Oliver is a dude with a bow and arrow. A very skilled dude with a bow and arrow, but still just a dude with a bow and an arrow. You see, when you're making a story like this, you want the villains to be in a sweet spot of power. You want them to be stronger than the main character so that the character can struggle with fighting them. But if you make the main villain too strong, the main character has to beat them in some contrived way or have plot armor just to have a chance of winning. And if you make them too weak, the main character will either not have a challenge to win or will have to be stupid just to lose. It's a delicate balance of having the villains be strong, but not too strong that you write yourself into a corner. Arrow does this in a number of ways, mostly by just making the main villains people who are highly skilled ninja assassins, because, again, Oliver is a dude with a bow and arrow. I can't express this enough. Oliver is a dude with a bow and arrow. He has a bow and an arrow. He shoots arrows, and the writers thought it was a great idea to match him up with the dude who can break the sound barrier casually. Now, here's one of the big problems with crossovers if you don't think about them hard enough first. Each of these individual shows and stories within this cinematic universe have different levels of power based on their main character and the story that they're going through. And their villains are balanced out based on that, so everything has a certain level depending on what the story is like. But since we have all of these different stories with different levels of power being mishmashed together, it causes things to not really make that much sense.
The city's flying, we're fighting an army of robots. And I have a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense.
I love when the Flash and the MCU do the work for me of pointing out why this is so dumb and makes no sense.
Barry has superpowers. Oliver has a bow and arrow.
Do you have any idea how many people Oliver has killed with that bow and arrow?
Recurve bow arrows can travel up to 300 feet per second, so like 200 miles an hour. Barry can run 3 times that fast.
Whatever. Oliver's been doing this a lot longer. My money's on experience.
My money's on speed.
Please tell me you're not actually having this conversation right now.
But he has like trick arrows and he's a master assassin ninja. None of that matters if Barry could just knock him out before he even has a chance to draw his bow. And this goes for a majority of the Arrow villains that Flash fights. He's just way too fast for them. If the Flash's own villains are not a match for him, you can guarantee the Arrow's villains are not going to be a match for him either. But we can't have Arrow and Flash not team up. We're in a cinematic universe, so let's just throw them in the same ring with each other and not think about anything. I'm sure throwing together a bunch of characters with vastly different power levels at every single fight won't cause any problems. Oh man, this cough is killing me. I don't know what that's about. But while we're talking about this, I need to make some things clear because I know they're going to be brought up. Villains don't technically need to be as strong as the main character. They can sometimes just be smarter or have complex schemes that allow them to get the leg up. To give an example, in the movie The Batman, the main villain is the Riddler, and the Riddler would probably lose in a fistfight to Batman because he's nowhere near as strong or as skilled. However, he doesn't just run up to fight Batman. He uses complex strategies like planting bombs or having armies of goons to stand in between him and Batman. So while he's not as strong as Batman, he uses clever strategies to overcome that so that he can still be a threat. Not every battle between heroes needs to be two superpowered people punching each other for 20 minutes until it ends. Villains can use complex strategies or master plans so that they can get around a main character's superpowers or special abilities. However, again, in a show like The Flash, where The Flash has super speed, there's only so many strategies that you can employ, and when you have 9 different seasons with hundreds of different villains, if they all used the same strategies to win, it would get boring. Which is again why you need to be very well aware of what your main character can do and how many ways the villains can get around their powers. So, lessons learned here. Make sure you tailor your story around the abilities your character has so that nothing falls apart if you think about it too hard. It might also help to think very critically about your action scenes as you're writing them. And most importantly of all, I cannot stress this enough, if you have super speed...
Don't stop to talk, don't stop to talk, don't stop to talk.
Looking for this?
Fuck you, you insufferable, brain-dead moron!